Okay, my name is Rabbi Altman, A-L-T-M-A-N. Okay, one or two of you I know already, but that's about it. Welcome to Yerushalayim. I'm not sure how long you've been here for, but it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited about this class today. This is an excellent topic. About a minute ago, someone just said, oh, this is going to be a good class. Now, that is actually the topic of today. The topic is that your statements, your words, and your emotions and your thoughts actually change reality. A lot of people have a very strong feeling that if you want to figure out what's going on in the world, you look at the world and you assess it. No, that's wrong. Well, that's partially true. It's only partially true. But it's an interactive setup. Your emotions, your thoughts, and especially your words change the reality. Okay? I want to give you a bunch of examples of that. You see that in the Torah. It's an idea that's so prevalent, it's so clearly obvious in the world that your thoughts and your words affect the reality that even in business they teach this, having nothing to do with spirituality, having nothing to do with anything else in terms of health and everything, not just psychologically, but they sense there's something spiritual going on, that when you say things, it affects the reality. So if you want to go to these great business coaches that tell you they get paid $10,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 an hour to speak to people, which is quite impressive, which means they must be very valuable, they'll get up and tell you that your emotions and your words and your thoughts affect reality. So I want to give you a bunch of different examples of that. There's many examples. I want to give you one example, okay? This will be a repeat for you, but that's okay. Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. Now, first thing is the following. I want to give you one example of this. Now, I'm going to write these things on the board, but I'm going to write it in English because there's different people have different skills, so it's nice and clear. This is an English translation. It's not the exact translation, but it gives you the idea, okay? Here's how it goes. The fear of a person, loosely translated, causes a trap. A person's fear causes a trap. That means a trap that's not supposed to be there. Sometimes you can see, if you look up in the spiritual world, so to speak, we can't see this, but if you would have the eyes to see, if we would have the eyes, we could see such a thing, that today a person's going to have a certain type of test. Yeah, the neighbor's going to be a little bit grumpy, the boss might yell at you, whatever it is, the bus driver, whoever it is. They might get a little bit upset with you. And that's a test for you. Now, those tests, some of those tests are planned, but some of those tests are not supposed to be on your day. They weren't slotted on the agenda at all. They only happened because when you got up in the morning and you started being a little bit grumpy, you started complaining, and you started saying, well, what's going to happen with my boss today? Maybe he's going to... and you start doing this, that actually causes a problem. So it's the fear of a person that causes a trap. On the other hand, there's the second half of that verse. It's a verse in Proverbs. Second half of that verse is, and one who trusts in God will be, now this is a fancy English word, okay? Extracted. What I mean is extracted from a dangerous situation. Rescued, saved, uplifted. Let's say it this way. Will be saved. Now, I don't mean saved in the sense, in the spiritual sense. I mean very physically saved from some type of danger. That means sometimes you have a situation that you're already meant to be, for whatever reason, your training that day requires some challenge. It might be a dangerous situation, whatever the situation is. If you trust, you have a sense of emotional tranquility, that itself will often extract you from the danger. Now, this is true spiritually. It's also true psychologically. Psychologically, everybody knows that if you walk down the street and you're very afraid and someone wants to rob somebody, you've just volunteered. Make sense? Yeah? That type of person is much more of an open victim and a target than a type of person who's walking down the street with confidence. Make sense? So you have a contrast right here. This is one example. A person who's afraid, that causes a trap that wasn't supposed to come. On the other hand, the person who's confident gets extracted and saved from a situation that was supposed to come anyway, and they get saved from it. Okay? That's one example. There's many, many examples of this. Now, here's another example. There's a general rule, happiness. Well, what is, in the most general terms, how would you describe the reason for happiness? The cause of happiness. Someone's happy when, what would you say?
Content.
Content, what would you say?
Good things happen.
Good things happen. It means content, same idea, it means the lacks that you have are filled in. When you're hungry, you've satisfied your desire to eat. Yeah, thirsty, tired, whatever it is, you've satisfied your desire, you're worried about something, now the thing has been, your lack has been, you're shalem, you're complete. The more shlemus you have, the more completion, the more wholeness, I don't know if that's a word to use, right? Whatever it is, the more you have of that, the more you can feel good. When something's missing, there's a tooth pain or a pain in the knee or something's missing in my bank account, whatever it is, right? Then I can't feel that same level of happiness. I don't feel shlemus, right? Now God is the source of all completion and happiness in the world. So he, so to speak, attracts and goes around and is with people that have the same mindset and opinion. If you're in a grumpy mood, God says, listen, I can't hang out with people that are grumpy. Doesn't mean that God doesn't take care of us, but the closeness really can't be there. When someone's in pain, they might need you, but they can't really be outside. They can't get out of their own heads and out of their own emotions. They're in their own pain. They feel their own pain. Yeah, when they're feeling good, they feel happy, and they're expansive, and they can relate to people, and they're happy. Make sense? Yeah? So God says, I don't put my concentrated presence, whatever that means, in places where people are in pain, where people are upset. That's not a word pain. They're upset. They're angry. They're sad. They're depressed. I'll help them, but there won't be that super closeness of like we're together sitting at a table and celebrating. Okay? Make sense? Now, here's an interesting, that's a little bit of an introduction. Now, there's a verse that says the following. There's a couple of examples like this. Now, this is all over the Torah. You see this all over the place. There's a verse where Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, wants to go into the place where God makes his presence felt the most. When the Jewish people were going in the Midbar, in the wilderness, they were traveling all around, and he sometimes would put a concentration of his presence, whatever that means, so you could feel more that God is in that place. So one of those places he put that in is called the Oyel Moyed, which is the tent of meeting. It's called the tent of meeting. That's where God would meet with people, so to speak, even though he's everywhere. You can feel more of a presence. Everybody knows that in life, there's certain places that you feel it more than others. Yeah, lahavdil, it's not the same thing, but you get a little bit of feel. If you're listening to music and you have a tremendous sound system, it's one thing. When you go to a concert, it's different. Make sense? It's totally, even though it's not just because it's live. It's because there's something there to it, right? You feel different when you're there. The experience of being there is different than just watching it or having it recorded, okay? Same thing here. God says, if you're on the spot where I am, you'll feel something different. But I don't go to places where people are bitter, or they're sad, or they're depressed. I'll help you, but it won't have the same connection. So there's a verse that says that Moses couldn't go into the tent of meeting. Why? This is what the verse says. It says, because, that's short, yeah? Because a cloud dwelled, English is very hard for me, no? Yeah? It's my first language, yeah. Dwelled on it, it's my only language. Now this word, because a cloud dwelled on it. In Hebrew, like in many other languages, everything is masculine and feminine. So the word on it is actually written on him, which refers to the tent. Moses couldn't go into the tent of meeting because a cloud was on the tent, on him. But you can also read this word him means that a cloud was on who? Moshe, on Moses. Yeah? He, for whatever reason, was feeling a little bit lower than his normal level of joy in life. And because of that, God said, listen, you can reach a higher level. You know, you're getting a little, according to your great level, you're getting a little bit slack, right? So you can't come in and have this close relationship with me if you're lacking that joy. Because I'm all about shlemus, I'm all about wholeness, and you have a lack. The lack is in you. So what happened eventually was, yes?
Is shlemus Hebrew or Yiddish?
I'm sorry, shlemus is Hebrew. It's shlemut. I'm saying it Ashkenazi way. Shlemut, which means completion. It comes from shalem and shalom. Shalom means peace. You have peace when you have everything when all the pieces are in place, you have peace. Okay? Now, when he changed his state, his emotional state, then he was able to go in. But the bitterness and the problem was him. Another example. Jewish people are traveling throughout the wilderness. At a certain point, they get to a place where they were lacking water. They didn't have water. And they said they couldn't drink ki marim haim, because the waters were bitter. Marim, bitter. Haim, they. They were bitter. The same thing here. Just like we did with this verse, we can do the same thing with that verse. They were bitter means not that the waters were bitter. They themselves were bitter. Now, physically speaking, this is actually true. I have a friend who told me his aunt was very, very ill, and she had terrible, terrible sickness. She couldn't eat any food. All the food was disgusting to her. Even like totally beautiful food that was her favorite food, she couldn't eat it. Accidentally, they discovered when they burnt food that she liked the part that was burnt. So they started just burning all of her food, and then she'd eat it. They tried to do it mixed up so some of the food wasn't actually spoiled and ruined, but there'd be some nutrition in there. But they would overcook all of her food and have it like charcoal on the outside, and then she would eat it. It was black sheep would eat it. Why? So doctors explain very simply. Sometimes if a person is very sick, then things that are sweet taste bitter, and bitter things taste sweet. So here, they went to a place where the water was sweet and good. Yeah? But they themselves were bitter, so they tasted it as bitter. Your internal reality affects what you see on the outside. If you change, it changes. The rectification, the solution to the problem of that situation was they threw a tree into the water. Now, that can be understood on different levels. The simple level, if you ever take a bite out of a piece of bark, besides the fact that it might hurt your teeth, there's another reason you don't do it. You ever have cinnamon bark? Yeah, why do you suck on cinnamon's bark? Because it tastes good, right? What about the bark that's on the trees outside? Bitter. If you put bitter into water that's sweet, you make the bitter water, the sweet water bitter, and you're bitter. Bitter and bitter equals sweet. Fantastic, they're able to drink it. Understand? No problem. That's one way. The other way is the word eitz, which means a tree, that Moses threw a tree into the water, is always a symbol, among other things, of Torah. When you have a greater clarity about the reality, you have more Torah, you understand what's happening in the world, and you say, oh, this isn't bad, it's good for me. A classic example, I heard this story from an old man. He died about 2 years ago, actually. Very, very wise man also, Rabbi, his name was. He said that when he was a little boy, now this man was about 90-something years old when I heard this story from him. He said when he was a little boy, he's sitting in his classroom, must have been about 5 years old, and he was a good kid, and he sat there with his pencils and his papers. Those days he had pencils and papers, right? And he's writing, taking notes, and the kid next to him was a wild kid. And the kid almost never sat in the chair. He was almost any place but in the chair where he was supposed to be, right? So anytime this rabbi was a young boy, did anything wrong, the teacher would, discipline him very strongly. Anytime the other kid did anything wrong, nothing, silence. So after 6 months, the kid finally says to the teacher, "Teacher, why? I'm doing the right thing. You give it to me, I do the wrong thing. Right away, I get it. Like he's a wild kid. Like why you give it to me?" So he said, in the old days, when you want to make butter and you want to make cream, what do? You take milk. What do you do with it? You turn it. You whip it. Yeah, churn is good too. But you whip it, right? You whip it. If the milk is sour, you don't whip it. Because it will never turn into butter. It will never turn into cream. It's only if it's sweet and it's good, then you whip it. Yeah, understand? Now that's a piece of knowledge. When you go to the gym, if you go to the gym, I've never been to a gym in my life, but you get the idea, right? Doesn't mean I don't exercise, right? Anyway, you go to the gym, right? And you go in there and you say, listen, these weights are way too heavy. You have any light ones? No one says that because your knowledge is clear that if I don't have a lot of resistance, I won't get any growth, right? The more resistance, the more growth. If it doesn't challenge me, it won't change me. I want it to challenge me. I want to get growth out of this. That's a piece of knowledge. The more Torah, the more clarity I have, the more the bitter things in life are not bitter anymore. I realize, oh, there's a purpose for that. Everything that's happening to us is being carefully orchestrated to teach us something we need to know in order to move forward. If we don't learn that lesson, it keeps getting repeated. But the problem is that we don't, there's two reasons why things are hard. One is because they're difficult, and one is because we fight against them. Right? Sometimes there's an idea of going with it a little bit. I don't know much about this. It's a certain type of martial arts. I'm not sure what it is. I forgot what it's called right now. Could be it's capoeira, but I don't think it's capoeira. It's something else. Where it's not as much hitting and defending as moving with the person that's fighting with you. I'm not sure what it's called. A lot of them like that. Maybe it's a general rule. I don't know. But that just means that there's a certain sense of a dance. I heard Bruce Lee once said. He said, when you fight, you have to make yourself. When you're in combat, you have to make yourself like water, formless. What does that mean? It means that I'm so in tune with the other person that as he moves, I move also. I don't have to think, well, he's about to hit me now with his hand. I better duck. No, I'm in tune with it. I'm flowing with it. It's different than, yeah? Okay, good. Now, a little further. During this week right now, it's a period of time of mourning. It's the 9 days. It's the last of the 9 days is Tisha B'Av. Everyone's heard of that, which is the greatest day of mourning for the Jewish people almost throughout most of our history. Okay, it started way back when in the wilderness when the Jewish people left Egypt. That's when this whole mess started. We haven't finished it yet. Okay, both temples were destroyed on this day, on the end of the week, same day, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. Same idea. Now, where did it start? What was the cause? So there's a lot of causes, but I want to tell you two different aspects of this that happens to be affect this week and affects everything in life. Okay, it's one of these ideas that affects everything in life. First thing, when the Jewish people were about to go into the land of Israel, they said, let's send spies. Great, they send spies, they look at it, they come back, they didn't like it. All kinds of reasons why. They gave a very negative report. Because they gave a negative report, the Jewish people got extremely discouraged and they all started crying. Very famous. So God said to them, I'm about to give you something amazing. You're crying about something terrific. That means you're not yet ready to receive that amazing gift called the land of Israel. You're not up to it yet. You're gonna go in there with a negative eye and see it in a negative way, and you won't appreciate what it is. So you need to spend another 40 years wandering around, getting your acts together, so to speak. Of course, I'm being very, very generalized, okay? And very, very not fair. It was much more than that, right? But generally speaking, they weren't ready. Now, what did these spies do when they went in there? They went in and they saw men that were giants. And they described themselves, they said, we were in our own eyes like grasshoppers. And so too we were in their eyes. Now, when the Torah writes words, it doesn't write anything extra. If we were like grasshoppers compared to giants, just say it. Don't say, we were like grasshoppers, in our eyes we were like grasshoppers, and they saw us like grasshoppers also. That second phrase is totally extra. What's going on over there? If you stand next to a giant, the word grasshopper just means it's another way of saying like an ant. It's just various reasons why they say grasshopper is not our topic right now, right? But it just means that very small. What's the extra phrase there for that says, and we were also small in their eyes too? What's the idea? It's exactly what we're saying. The only reason they were perceived as small by these giants, even though they were small, was because of their own perspective. Now, what do I mean? This is a time in the history of the Jewish people that was not a normal time. It was a time filled with miracles on a daily basis. Not like that these days. Open miracles you can see with your eyes. Okay? When the Jewish people are about to go into Israel and they're sending spies, it's not unusual that they'll be protected. They were protected, in fact. Yeah, there was a plague that was sent to the people of Israel, the people living in Israel at that point, and they spent a lot of the time burying people, so they didn't have any time to pay attention to these spies, and they were protected. Now, God says like this. The Talmud says about this incident that God forgave their vision of being small about themselves. But God said, I can't forgive you that you said that you're small to them. Who says you're supposed to be small to them? Maybe they're not even going to notice you. Maybe they're going to see you as big. Now that sounds strange because we live in a daily world where things are not like that. You usually see things as they are. If someone's bigger than you see, wow, he's big. Right? What do you call a really big guy? Tiny. Yeah, it's always like that. Right? Yeah. I knew a guy once, he said he wanted to be a hillbilly. No, he wanted to be a redneck, I think that was his terms. He wanted to be a redneck. He was a nice Jewish kid from someplace in the eastern place in the United States. And I said, well, if you're really a redneck, you have to have a pickup truck. He says, I got a truck. I said, if you're really a redneck, then you have to have a pickup truck that has a name. He says, yeah, I call him Bob. I said, well, if it's a really big, it must be a big truck, I call him Big Bob. I said, if it's a really big truck, you don't call Big Bob. He says, well, I only told you Big Bob because I thought you wouldn't understand, but really I call it Little Bob. Yeah? Anyway, this is a little side point. Now, let's keep going. You can cut that out. Now, next. Sometimes you have to do things to change the emotional state, yeah? The Jewish people went in there and they said, we're small. So because they saw themselves as small, they were perceived as small by the people around them. Now there's other examples even less than 100 years ago where people were quite obviously in a certain physical situation, but because they saw themselves differently, they weren't perceived as their physical situation. I'll give you an example. It's a crazy situation. It's known, this is documented, about 70 years ago, a certain rabbi named Rabbi Wasserman, he was inside Nazi-controlled Europe. He and his son, without any papers whatsoever, got on trains with Nazis and Germans, all around, right? And they walked out and they traveled out of Nazi-controlled Europe without any papers whatsoever. They're on the train with SS soldiers, SS officers. there was a certain point they said, how do they do this? Because they had perception. They were going back to this original thing. The fear of a person causes a trap, but one who trusts in God will be saved. They thought to themselves, if God wants us to get out of here, it doesn't make a difference how many bad guys there are. Now, that's not a normal situation. It was the middle of the Holocaust. Anyway, they were in danger. They weren't just, you don't go in a situation, well, if God wants me to fly, I'll fly. You don't do that, right? But anyway, they were in danger. And they were trying to do things to save themselves, right? So they were able to think, if God wants to get out of here, just like with the spies didn't have to be seen as small. We don't have to be seen as small either. The entire time they were ignored. At a certain point, 2 SS officers started walking straight over to them. So Rabbi Yochanan Wasserman said to his son Simcha, he says, you're not concentrating. You're thinking about what you actually physically look like instead of what your spiritual essence is. You're forgetting about God right now. Don't concentrate. So they started walking up to him, and then he started concentrating again. They just walked away. They walked out of Nazi-controlled Europe. It's unbelievable. It's an incredible thing. Okay, that's less than 100 years ago. Yes?
Were they dressed like...
Like Orthodox Jews, beards down to here and tzitzis flying in the air and all the above. They look like, yeah, like big red sirens in the middle of the library going, arrest us. Yes, crazy. Now, here's another idea. There's a word that's used to describe pain. I don't know what a good word is for this. A lesion. In the English word that I use, at least at home, is a boo-boo. How do you say that? A cut, a boo-boo. How do you say? What's a proper word for boo-boo? A wound. It's like a wound, I guess. Like, but it's a wound. You know, a kid could fall down and scrape his knee. You wouldn't say that's a wound, right? But like, yeah, it's a boo-boo. You know, but a wound also, right? So the way to say that in Hebrew is nega. Okay, a nega. I'm writing it like this, right? Nega, that's supposed to be a nun, by the way. A nega is a wound, a boo-boo. Now, this word nega is a very interesting word. You see this word in reference to a person that has a spiritual disease called saras. It's spiritual leprosy. A person usually gets that because they speak lashon hara. They speak negatively. When they speak negatively about other people, God says you have to have this boo-boo called nega. It's a certain affliction. It's a skin affliction. There's a word for that also, right? Now, what's interesting here is there's a verse that describes this and says that if that boo-boo, that nega, appears in a certain way, it has a certain negative spiritual status. A person has to be away from everyone else. If the appearance of that boo-boo changes, that nega, then he's allowed to be with everybody else. The way the Torah describes it is, it says the nega didn't switch its appearance. It didn't switch its appearance. Now, the way it uses the word appearance, it says this word. Ayin. Like an eye. Ayin means an eye. It didn't switch its appearance, its eye. Now, why is that? Because when a person speaks lashon hara, says things that are negative about other people, it's because they have a negative perspective. Yeah, there's something wrong about everything in the physical world. It's always like that. Nothing's perfect. Nothing is perfect. Now, so there's always something going to be wrong with everything. Your choice is to focus on the positive or to focus on the negative. When a person focuses so much on negative, he makes himself so negative that he starts to speak negatively about other people. His perspective becomes negative and he gets nega. He gets what's called this spiritual affliction. It doesn't exist anymore. It's once upon a time he had such a thing. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's not modern.
It's also modern too, but this nega actually refers to a very specific thing as well, which means it means an appearance of this spiritual disease called saras.
So it doesn't mean, like, what does it mean in modern?
There is a term, negayim also means modern Hebrew, but there's an aspect that means like some type of wound also. It means that also sometimes. Usually it's a pesas and different word. Yes?
Do you know what that spiritual disease feels like?
Do I know what it feels like?
No.
Oh, there's a physical representation of it that there are blotches on the skin. That's what it is. It blotches on the skin. You can see it. Now, the verse says, what makes a person in this spiritual state where he has to be away from everybody else? That the nega, this thing, didn't switch its ayin, its appearance. Now look, this word nega has a letter ayin. If you move this ayin and you spell it in a different way, it becomes oneg, which is a word you're probably more familiar with. Yeah? Which means pleasure, like oneg Shabbos. If you switch your eye, you move where your perspective is, then pain becomes pleasure. It sounds like a cute thing. It's not cute. It's built into reality. It's very important. There's a great phrase, I love this phrase. It's that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Another way of saying it, it's not because things are difficult that we dare not venture, it's because we dare not venture that they're difficult. You fight it, you fight it, you fight it. Yeah, like, I'm resisting. Don't resist. Get into it. Anything you can't get out of, get into wholeheartedly. Same idea. Okay, that's the perspective. Now, one last thing. Some names from Tanakh, from the Torah, are very famous, like Moses and Jacob and things like that. Yeah? Some names are less famous. There's a person who's described by the Talmud as a tremendous tzaddik, a tremendously righteous person. Matter of fact, one of the most righteous people who ever lived. If you ask a lot of people, even religious people, even somewhat knowledgeable people, if you've heard of this name, they'll say, no. The person's name is Yoisam. Yoisam or Yotam. Now that is a word that's used in modern Hebrew. That is a name that's used. Okay? But it's not one of the most common names. Definitely not like David or something like that, like one of these names. Yeah? Shimon. That's a name that's used a lot, right? Now, Yoisam, the Talmud says there were three men in history who were incredible. One of the incredible people was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He wrote the Zohar. A very big man. Now, it was said about him that in his merit, he could exempt the entire generation from any punishment whatsoever, in this world and the next world. He's a very, very big man. They said if you add the merit of his son, then they could exempt all people from any type of punishment or pain from the beginning of time till they're alive. It's pretty big. Two big people, right? And then, now these two are very famous. If you add a third person, they said, we could exempt, technically, they didn't do it, but practically, it wasn't up to them, right? But technically, they had such merit that they could exempt anyone from any type of punishment or suffering from the beginning of time till the end of time. And who is that? Yoisam. Who is that? Yoisam ben Uziah. Now, let's describe him. This is an amazing thing. Yoisam was a prince. His father, Uziah, was one of the kings of Israel. Now, this king got sarast. He got the spiritual leprosy that we're talking about. He got nega. And he had to leave. When a person has this, they have to leave. They have to go from anywhere, go totally away from everyone else. So he's the king. He's sitting in the palace. He's running the country. Sorry, Your Majesty, I don't know how to tell you this, but you have nega sarast. You have this spiritual leprosy, and you got to go. Right? Now, periodically he gets checked to see if everything's fine, but in the meantime, he's out there by himself in the wilderness, away from everybody else, and how are you supposed to run the country that way? So his son, Yoisam, was the active king while he was away. Now, I don't know if you experience this, I'm not sure anyone's old enough to appreciate this yet. When you get older, one of the most intense evil drives, evil inclinations, temptations is the desire for honor. Honor. Especially when it comes to men. Women have it also, men even more. Women have a slightly different version of it. Yeah? But the version that men want honor and power. It's nasty. The older you get, the more you want it. You want a name, you want recognition. You realize it's not my body, it's not my money, it's not my relation, it's power. It's name, it's recognition. That's going to live on after me, my legacy, right? So listen to this. Yoisam is a man, he's a young man, he's getting older, his father's the king, he knows that when his father dies, he's going to become the king, and now he's sitting on the throne, and his father's out there in the wilderness, and he's running the country. There was an incredible desire that he had to take over and say, I'm the king now. But he never did that. He said, I'm going to run the country sitting next to my father's throne. All the decrees he made in the name of his father. He never became active king. Now, that's a bitter test. That was very hard because as time went on, people said, listen, it's a year now, your father's still out there. Who knows when he's going to come back? You might as well just take over, put the crown on your head and take over, be the king. When he comes back, yeah, you'll give it back to him. Sure he will, right? He said, no, I'm not doing that. He's the king, I'm not doing that. How long was his father away?
10 years.
That's what I would guess, 10 years. More than that. 40 years.
40?
40 years. In that time, the test for Yosef, imagine 39 years the father's not here. He's like, well, I don't think he's coming back. I might as well just sit on the throne. I'll give it back to him. No, that would have been a mistake. He accrued such a mountain of merit that he became the third man in this trio of great men that could exempt the entire world from any type of punishment and pain. Now, how did that happen? It happened by means of the nega, of the affliction, of the pain of his father. His father merited to have a son that became so great because the father had pain himself. If the father didn't have that pain, that suffering, and it wasn't away for 40 years, the son would never have been able to become as great as he became. The pain was a ticket to the oneg. Does that make sense? It's an incredible thing. A lot of times we're fighting, constantly fighting. God is saying to us, whatever situation you're in, you're like, oh, there's a gift here in this pain. There's a gift here, and what seems to be difficult right now is going to be long-term beautiful. Now, we don't ask for difficulty. We're not looking for that. When the Jewish people went into Israel, they went in with a negative perspective. So they saw what they thought and what they spoke without being objective. You walk in, open mind, and you see, what does it look like? They didn't do that. They decided it's no good. How do we know this? Every year on Tisha B'Av, there's a certain thing we read from the Torah which is called Asa Lamentations. A very sad piece of Torah. On and on. We're sitting on the ground. It's a day of mourning. Oh, it's 3 weeks of mourning. Yeah? Now, those verses are in alphabetical order. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dal. Alphabetical, yeah? They're all in Aleph, but there's 2 chapters that 2 of the verses are reversed. 2 verses are reversed. It's supposed to be ayin and then pei. That's the way the Aleph Beis is. Ayin and then pei. But in 2 of them, it's pei first, then ayin. Now the word pei, the letter pei, which is this, is pronounced peh, which I'm just writing in English, peh, which means mouth. Pei is peh, same thing, it's mouth. Okay? And ayin, we already said, ayin equals I. Now in the verse, it was reversed. Instead of first the I coming and then the mouth, I wrote the word peh, sorry. Mouth. Instead of first looking and then saying, oh, it's hot outside. Oh, it's snowing. Oh, I see you brought home pizza. Yeah? Instead, they spoke first. Because they spoke and they said the land is no good, that changed what they saw. They were makdim peh la'ayin. They said before they saw. Now, if you're going to say something, you should say it positively. You ever see those emails that go around that everyone gets that you don't think any of them are actually true, but the idea is true? Yeah? You know what I'm talking about? These cute little emails. You know that email about the guy who was like a jock and he sees the guy who's like the very geeky kid and he's got all these books and he's going, what are you going to do all that homework? The kids, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, anyway, there's all these cute emails that go around. Maybe they don't have them anymore. No one sends emails anymore. It's all probably like, Facebook, whatever it is. Anyway, I'm from the old days, yeah. Now, one of these emails I got a long time ago was a lady who was in, her husband had died a long time ago. She was a much older lady, and she's in an assisted living place. And they're moving her to a new place. She had lost her sight. And they're moving her to a new place, a new room where she can be it's much easier for her to deal with, but she doesn't have to see everything. Right? She is built for her. So there was a woman helping her, a young lady helping her bring it to the new place. And she goes into the new place and she says, oh, I love it. And the young lady says, but you haven't, you don't know anything about it yet. We just walked in. I didn't describe it to you yet. She said, no, it's okay. It doesn't matter. I decided no matter what, I'm going to love it. Now, it sounds really cute, right? But it's 100% true. She's going there anyway. Yeah? You're going to be there anyway. There's not a whole bunch of choices here. Yeah? So you might as well make the best of it. If you go in saying that it's negative, of course you see everything negative. Okay? Now, this is the type of thing everybody makes, it makes sense. You don't need, really don't need to learn this from the Torah, but I'm not sure we all live there. We often live as like, oh, what else is next? Yeah? The what else is next kind of brings it on. Whereas like, oh wow, I can't wait to see what else is great happening in life. Now you can't go through life thinking everything's fine when it's not fine. You have to take action, you have to be responsible, you have to protect yourself, you have to do things. For sure that's the case. But you don't have to make it worse by saying everything's terrible. When we say it's terrible, it becomes terrible. We are suffering now, today, this week. Hopefully it's going to switch into oneg, into pleasure, the nega, yeah? But still the way it is, at least right now, is there's still pain. We still don't have there's no temple in Jerusalem. It's not rebuilt yet. The Jewish people are still spread across the whole world. There's a lot of pain for many years. That started with negative speech. So one positive thing you can do is say to yourself, change your speech a little bit. And I want to tell you something. I think you probably have heard this. I don't know if this is 100% true, but it fits so clearly, I can't imagine that it's not. What's the famous word? I don't mean please. That's the word of magic, when you want to do a magic thing. What's the famous word? There's two of them, but what's one of them? Abracadabra. Abracadabra, right? Someone just told me, last year, I learned this last year, I just heard this. I don't know if it's true, you know this, right? Yeah? Abracadabra. What's abracadabra? If you spell out the word abracadabra, funny, right? What is he going to say, right? What's he going to say, right? Nope, not come on. No, it's nothing fancy. It's straight. It's absolutely clear. It's shockingly clear. It's one of these things that's so clear, just how could it not be? Yeah? If you write this word in Hebrew or in Aramaic, same idea, it's the word avra. That means I will create. Ka is ke, means like. Adabra. I'm writing it in script for, yeah? I will create like I will speak. That's what the word says. That's what it says. I create like I speak. It's unbelievable. Now, I don't know if it's true, but it fits in pretty well. I mean, it's not even gematria, you know what I'm saying? It's pretty tight. So I'm not sure it's true, but what you see for sure is true. We know it's other places. I'm not sure. I didn't see a source for that. I just saw that hanging on a wall upstairs in this place. Yeah, interesting, yeah? I don't know if it's true or not, but the idea is for sure true. If you want your life to be happier, you want to be a more successful person, say, I'm a successful person. Now, it doesn't mean you can just sit there and say you're successful and do not do anything. Of course you have to take action. But say, it's a wonderful day today. You want to be beautiful, say, I am beautiful. You want to be smart, say, I am smart. You want other people to think they're smart and be smart, say, they're smart, they're beautiful. Your words affect them as well. Okay? I'm saying besides psychologically. Psychologically, for sure, that's true. But spiritually, it's also the case. Okay? We have a wonderful week. It's nice to meet everybody. All the best.